It's too low for me. Teachers and Education Workers Union TAWU has joined NAGRAT and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers to demand payment of their vehicle maintenance allowance. This comes after a strategic meeting asking government to pay their over 15 months arrears owed its membership under the 3 months payment policy. We'll be getting onto the phone lines with the General Secretary of TAWU, Augustine Cabo, to speak. I think he's on the line now. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us. Well, Augustine Cabo is not on the line now, but we'll be trying to raise him on the telephone lines to discuss the issues that they're raising and the ultimatum they've given to government to pay their due allowances. Now, the Teachers and Workers Union of TAWU has joined NAGRAT and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers to demand payment of their vehicle maintenance allowance. And this comes after a strategic meeting in which they're also asking government to pay the over 15 months arrears owed its members. We're joined on the line now by the General Secretary, Augustine Cabo. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us. So why are you now raising these concerns when government has already directed in documents by its members for you to provide documents from NAGRAT and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers?
We are not raising a separate concern. TAWU has been in a meeting all this while alongside NAGRAT and the rest, raising those issues to us. Our major concern is that our members have submitted all of those documents to us well, but after we've met severally with the Director General of Ghana Education Service, and they've indicated that steps are being taken to indeed address the concerns of our members. It now appears it's only NAT and the other associations that have raised those matters.
Right. So are you able to tell us how many of your members are demanding for these vehicle maintenance allowances, and how much really does government owe you?
I may not be able to put a figure on the amount in terms of the amount of money government owns our members, in terms of numbers too as well. But you can imagine the non-teaching staff throughout the whole country in all the 10 regions have similar concerns. And those data has been collated. They've submitted their information in terms of those who are having salary arrears, those who have been transferred and not been paid their transfer grants, and those who have vehicles or vehicle maintenance allowance. And all these things have not been paid to most of our members, right from 2011, 12 upwards up to date. So you can imagine why I'm not able to put a figure on,
right?
Because the quantum is quite huge.
I can understand.
The numbers are quite numerous too as well.
I can understand. Now let me take us back to this 3 months payment policy. And we do know that members of other teacher unions have been made to submit documents. Are your members willing to submit documents also for validation before they're paid under that 3 months payment policy?
Our members have already submitted documents, but in another way, the 3 month policy, who brought it? It's government policy, and the unions are aware. And again, when those things were being put in place, we raised the certain practical situations the union or members of our union find ourselves in. That you engage someone for whatever reason, not the fault of the member of the union or the worker, that his employment have not been processed and he's not been hooked onto the payroll system. Now, the process is so cumbersome. You are engaged in a local school within the district director have to liaise with the region, from the region to the national, and you come to the National Controller and Accountant General audit and all these things, the worker is not privy to all of these things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, he's made to bear the brunt of not being paid his salary on time, and subsequently he's been asked to only be paid 3 months, while the rest they are making effort to justify or to pay them. It's seriously unfair to the worker
right.
on the ground who has devoted to give his or her time and effort to the nation. And that should not be the way we should pay them back for service provided.
So, I mean, we need to understand whether indeed you've been pushing for these allowances to be paid. Have you been in constant negotiation with government over the matter, and perhaps you are not satisfied, or you haven't done anything at all?
I must tell you, all these meetings that are going on and the noise being made by NAGRAT and the rest, we've all been along. I told you just the last meeting with the Director General, I am aware Tewu was fully participated, was represented by the General Secretary and the National Chairman. But afterwards, again, that's where I have issues with NAGRAT and the rest, where we go as a block or educational unions within the education sector. They are teachers, they sometimes think they are superior to other workers within the schools. They find their way out there and they speak as if all the issues, all the problems is all about teachers.
Right.
The school is made up of the non-teaching staff and the teachers as well. And the non-teaching staff, we provide the technical know-how, administrative, secretarial,
right.
and so on and so forth for the school to operate effectively. So when issues are affecting both the non-teaching staff and the teaching staff, we should look at it from that perspective.
From that perspective.
Not sideline
so you think that
staff as well, as if we don't have concern.
Right. Thanks very much, Augustine Cabo. You've made your point very clear. Thanks very much for joining us. Augustine Cabo is the General Secretary of Tewu. Now, a council member of the MP for Klote Kole Niyama Ashite has alleged he's being trailed by unknown persons. In a letter to the court sitting on the case, Gary Nimako requested an adjournment to enable him put security measures to protect himself and his family. Here's a report by Godfred Tenan.
The High Court, presided over by Justice Kweku Akabuafo, granted the request. The court could not disclose the full content of the letter during proceedings. However, a letter intercepted by the media stated reason why the lawyers and their client Niyama Ashite requested for an adjournment. According to the letter, the lead counsel for the MP, Gary Nimako, is being trailed by some unknown persons anytime he drives home after close of work. The letter further added when he stopped at the North Legon police post to make a complaint, the unknown persons drove off. Lawyer for Dr. Zenato Rawlings, Godwin Tamaklo, expressed worry over the development, stating it is unfortunate if it is true.
I do not think that anybody associated with my client will engage in that. If anybody has that, he should desist from it because it is improper. Tomorrow it can be me being on the other side.
The court adjourned the case to March 9 when the lawyer would have made security arrangement for himself and the family. Niyama Ashite is in court seeking the disqualification of Dr. Zenato Rawlings as a parliamentary candidate for the Kole Klote constituency. He insists she is not a registered voter and cannot stand to be elected.
Right now, former Attorney General and Minister of Justice Martin Amido has kicked against the passage of the Postal Packets and Telecommunications Bill into law. In a letter addressed to Parliament dated February 29, Martin Amido said the bill had the tendency to interfere with fundamental human rights and freedoms of citizens as guaranteed under the Constitution. He adds that the bill needed a critical bipartisan examination and analysis to ensure that it secured civil liberties recognized in free and democratic societies. According to Mr. Amidu, Section 6 will be unnecessary if the request for authorization or warrant is made directly by the law enforcement or security and intelligence agency concerned. The bill is currently in its consideration stage in Parliament, and when passed into law, it will give government the power to intercept postal packages upon suspicion of threat to the security of the country or any other individual. So I have with me Albert Ntribosiako, who is E-Crimes Bureau, from E-Crimes Bureau, joining us here for a discussion on it. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us. So what's the big fuss about this interception packets postal bill? I mean, what's the big deal about it?
Well, I think primarily, it might be a mistrust, it might be some fear that has been generated, and part of the media is also, part of the problem, if I might say.
Why are we part of the problem?
Well, absolutely, maybe the manner. Sometimes we need to be clear, let the citizens understand.
But if there is a law which seeks to listen to private conversations,
Absolutely.
and we haven't been giving detailed explanations what the purpose of it is for, everybody should be concerned.
Absolutely, I think you are right here. My submission is, I think we should also have that mandate to explain the realities on the ground to them. I think it will help them, address some of these concerns. Certainly anything private, raise certain concerns. And I think we have obligation to bring the stakeholders, whoever, to answer certain questions, to make sure, we calm nerves in this case. Because personally speaking,
So you see this as just a matter of calming nerves?
well, perhaps maybe the manner in which the government introduced the bill might have generated this whole issue, but not the substance of the legislation.
So
itself.
it looks like you're in favor of this bill.
Well,
in that, in substance, you wish there is such a bill.
But I don't think even, Mr. Martin Elmidu
Disagrees
disagree
with the law.
that. I mean,
But
this
there
is-
are other laws, narcotic laws and other laws which allows interception of a kind for people to listen into communications, whether emails,
I think
telephone calls,
all right.
tap into.
Steve, I think, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a technical person in terms of cybersecurity and other things, and I would like to share with you, there's a major gap. Our
that area.
agencies are lacking that kind of powers to be able to address some of the issues. There are a lot of things going on. People using unregistered numbers to communicate, to do all sorts of things. Criminals are communicating using encryption, including terrorists. Well, there are laws. But, I also like to listen, on the discussion of our constitution, the privacy. Absolutely. Ghana is a country of law. And I expect that any legislation which is passed should be in compliance with what? The almighty, document that, regulates our practices here. But what we sometimes also forget is the fact that when it comes to security, there should be a fair balance. This is where, I haven't seen much. The balance between the privacy and also the security of the entire population. We're not looking at it. Why are we always talking about its privacy without looking at the security angle? When the framers of the Constitution...
So you think that we are pushing too much towards individual liberties rather than collective security of the state?
I think, seriously...
Or we should balance it. But where do we create that balance?
That is where we need to discuss. In other words, I want to shift the focus of discussion, not really the substance. It has happened elsewhere. 3 years ago, I was in the US, I traveled. When I got my bag, I opened the bag and I realized the bag had been searched, the content. They left a note indicating even the powers that gave them the authority to search documents.
And that your bag has been searched.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've had that incident a number of times.
Absolutely.
And, it doesn't make it all right.
Wow, the facts is, do we believe in Constitution more than the US, for example? There's a question I may ask. It might sound stupid, but it's just a question that I want to ask. The problem here is our system is not matured. That is why it's creating all these issues. Mature means that when we implement this legislation, there are certain fears. And, Martin Emidu has raised some of those concerns, which I think we need to look at. So it's more of, look, do we need this legislation? Is it necessary? Is it in line with global trends? 1992, the framers didn't know how technology is actually evolving up to this level, that criminals will have encryption system to communicate. They didn't have that idea. That doesn't mean we should move away from our fundamental tenets of democracy and principles. But we need to make sure that whatever is going to be implemented in the act is in line with our constitution. We should be looking at more of safeguards, checks and balances, for example. Those are the argument. For example, if we don't trust, because our system, what is going on around, we might not trust a single judge, to issue a warrant. Can we put a panel of judges? That could be a matter for discussion. You see, in other words, we can customize this legislation to meet our evolving, democratic credentials, that we can perhaps give a power into one person's hand because the trust is not there, as perhaps in the US or in the UK. Politicians those are the issues.
Let me give you a particular scenario. You are a Ghanaian, I am a Ghanaian.
Correct.
My address, if I wrote down my address and say, for example, I live on Sunset Place Avenue, number 1, wherever, you might not be able to find my house. So it does mean that if you get somebody with a SIM card registered in his name and address, 90 to 1%, you might not be able to locate this person because our systems don't work. So why not invest into making sure that these systems work first before you start listening to our conversations?
Absolutely. That is another area. In terms of building the structure, the system to be able to trace people, but I want to say practically it's not just addressing system to trace someone. There are other mechanisms that you can also use to trace someone even without addressing
which are what? You said other mechanisms, which are what?
Well,
what types of
mechanisms? We're going too technical, but when you make a call, it's connected you to somewhere. So, the agencies, even currently without our structured addressing system, are still able to locate people and arrest them. Not their homes. You might even have the phone, but you are not living in your home. You've moved from Adenta, you are living somewhere else, but they still be able to locate you. So that is not, I don't think, the substance of the discussion. All that we're saying is, as Ghanaians, let's look at the two options. Do we need a legislation that will protect us, in terms of our advancement in technology?
Do we?
Absolutely, we do. As I'm saying, as a practitioner, once again, sometimes we might not just listen to think tankers and, idealists. It's brilliant. Bring the practitioners here. Let them share what are some of the issues, the challenges confronting the job. I think with all intent, those who presented the bill wouldn't just because we don't need it, and then we brought it. You see, sometimes we need to be realistic in terms of this criticism of the whole bill. I have a problem. As I mentioned, we need better safeguards. I expect perhaps, apart from even the judge or panel of judges, can we have a sort of committee, a body that could periodically audit the authorizations? I expect my parliament to be able to mature and handle that responsibility as the Americans do. So these are the issues. I said I believe, because technically it's going to help law enforcement agencies to address the emerging criminal activities, especially organized crime with technology.
Now, this power sits in the bosom of the National Security Coordinator, and there have been questions raised about whether he's a rightful person to have that power, so that if he decides that maybe there is a threat here at TV3, he easily can just organize himself in 48 hours. You cannot complain about it. They'll tap your telephone and listen to every call that goes and comes. Okay. If we were to review, how should we review it from that? How should we review from entrusting the power into the hands of a security coordinator who is a political appointee to an institution or establishment to make those decisions?
Once again, this is a point to consider in customizing the bill to address the public concern. So I think I don't make the point clear. Let's really distinguish between, in substance, do we need this bill? Is it necessary? Then in terms of its applicability, let's set out the modalities. That's a brilliant idea. Certainly I don't favor a power being centralized in one person's hand, and I have to be very frank with you. So that address can be looked at. In terms of oral authorization, elsewhere, you could still make that application. It is valid. But then, you can make that application to still the panel of judges or a judge. It doesn't change anything. It could be oral before your formal documentations are handed over to you. So I think these are some of the few things. Once again, the bill is still work in progress. I believe it hasn't been passed. And there's opportunity that we need to focus the attention from in the spy bill, and rather than letting it work, we need to let it work to meet, our current development stage.
I need to ask you now. I mean, you from E-Crimes Bill.
Correct.
I need you to give us a fair idea what you feel are the maybe e-crime threats we face, because this is not only going to be somebody listening to a telephone call, but somebody also hacking the encryption of your computer and checking all the dates and communications you've had. So what specific threats face us as Ghanaians before before wanting to pass such a law?
I think, once again, I'll give a narrative. We've been practicing in this country close to 5 years. When we came over, the cybercrime that we're seeing were more, psychologically driven. Just the normal 419 where you have men dressing, using females' picture on dating websites.
To lure people, to send money to
and most of them were
accounts.
even, outward attacks targeting, Westerners, white people, to say.
And this is still ongoing, actually.
But the fact is, the crime landscape has transformed. We see more of inward attacks, and the criminals are developing technology systems, encryption devices. ISIS were here when these guys were communicating. Now, PlayStation, they are using an encryption system to communicate. How do we build the capacities? Sometimes, let me tell you, some encryption, the only alternative you have is to intercept live data to be able to make intelligence out of it, for the protection of the state. Terrorism is over. You're asking me what are the key threats? Currently, there's a course going on at the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center. A model which has been developed is cyber terrorism. We've seen cyber threats connected to terrorism within us, West African sub-region. Of course, that is a trend, because the terrorists are also using the technology to communicate. Money laundering is all over the place. Which platform are they using? The e-platforms. Human trafficking, narcotics, that is a new dimension. And we need to. It is not, I have a problem with the way we manage laws here. Currently, if you look at a banking setup, you've registered a bank, you open a bank account. This is what happens, okay? If you open an account and you want to request for transfer of funds, you can send an email and the money will be sent out. But the banks will let you sign what? Indemnity, right? What does it mean? When fraud happens on your account, for example, somebody sitting somewhere managed to use your email, just impersonation, to take money from your account. The conclusion is, no, it's not a problem. You've signed up what? Indemnity. Now you're sitting here, I wish there was time to demonstrate to you. A third party sitting somewhere can impersonate your email address
and go into your bank
and then
account
send the request to the bank.
And
no negligence of yours, and it will be honored. And the law will say you have what? Signed indemnity. My problem is technology is changing. We need to
be abreast with the technology.
Absolutely, we need to. Absolutely.
I'm afraid we'll have to continue. I'm grateful for your time, though. Mr. Intwi Bosiako is with the E-Crimes Bureau, and he has been educating us on the kinds of threats that face us in light of the passage of what has been termed as a spy bill. You're still watching News at 10.